Today, we will talk about XRP as well as a bit on XLM and SHX related to a couple of things happening in the government. The prominent one is that the XRP case has encountered yet another hiccup. The settlement agreement is not okay as it currently stands. And I haven't really ever seen a case that has the amount of procedurally improper circumstances in the paperwork. However, I don't really pay attention to a lot of cases out there. So it's essentially coming down to Judge Torres not really understanding why the enforcement agency, who had a problem with the exact same things that they're trying to settle on now, which was under a different administration, even if it was technically under the same president at the time it started. Why are you okay with this right now when not much has actually changed? And yes, there are a lot out there who say that it's just one more piece of the puzzle where Ripple and XRP have been purposefully held back in order to accomplish a much larger purpose. And a part of me still agrees with that to a relatively large extent, because the settlement agreement coming out on May 8th of 2025, which can be construed into 589, combined with the fact that the next document filed here would be 985. And the chances of a finalized settlement agreement that would ultimately be approved, having two of the largest parts of the Riddler stuff in there, is probably mathematically almost impossible. And there are also some speculations into how Hidden Road and its acquisition was actually a part of the plan too. Here is John Deaton commenting on the topic some.
What can we expect? I think we're going to have to see a brief. And I got to tell you, I think the SEC is going to have to eat crow. I think they're going to have to fall on their sword in this joint brief by saying that this case was misguided. I think they got to cite that Congress is working on bills, that digital assets are akin to commodities, and they've come to that decision that ETH, XRP, Solana, Bitcoin, all of these cryptos are in essence more like commodities and should not be governed. I think that they need to say, look, there's no victim here for Ripple.
Just to be clear, each time I talk about these topics about legislation and lawsuits, I am not a legal expert. I'm just providing some of my own personal commentary and how it ties in to other things. So I am 100% confident that I will not have these interpretations 100% correct. So it seems as if the attorneys involved didn't do their filing wrong. It just opted for the easy way and hoped that Judge Torres would accept it and just understand that a lot of change has happened and hope to wrap it up like that. She did not, and she is going to make them actually put in the work now. In the styling itself, which was for the approval of settlement, the two entities did not address the requirement to actually explain why they are coming to a settlement. And that is what the judge actually wrote. And the translation was essentially an F off, and that it was a huge investment of time, and the entire thing is just presented as if it's a whoopsie. He is also echoing John Deaton, where he is suggesting that they put in another filing and explain it with all of the developments and the progress and the legislation under review as well. So it will happen. It's just how and how much time it'll take. I did actually make a video on this recently, which I'm actually surprised I am talking about it again. However, it ties into another topic that I will discuss here too. But my last video, I commented a couple of times on why I was not optimistic on it just being quickly wrapped up. And a lot of that hype just kind of takes over in the YouTube and X spaces, and a lot of people seem to be surprised and upset at this when it's a legal process in one of the most bureaucratic governments out there. And I think a lot of that hype is picked up with the XRP community because of the statements of the company itself. And I don't hold it against them for presenting things in an optimistic way. But how it is right now, they still do not have a clear runway to be able to directly sell to institutions. So that would end up as a huge thing. And in all honesty, there are a lot of not positives that you have to actually concentrate on here. However, the impactful thing, especially with the timing of the market and with everything happening in the government, is that the retail sale of the actual XRP asset itself is not a security. So I am personally expecting the price to be one of the first and hardest pumps. So now we move into the other political thing happening and how I am tying in XLM and SHX. The crypto market structure bill that is being reworked and reproposed and everything, that is being talked about a lot more often now as compared to even a few weeks ago. And it's really important because it contains a lot of things. It is not only talking about stable coins and such. The Genius Act is actually concentrating on that more. I haven't talked a lot about either of these because it has been so early in the process, and we had a change in the government with who's involved in elections and results, and I was just kind of personally expecting it to take quite a while until anything actually happened and was concrete to actually talk about. However, a couple of the large things are that the oversight roles of the SEC and CFTC are actually specified here. So if a company owns over 10% of the token supply, then that would fall under the purview of the SEC. And the CFTC would have the responsibility for commodities, which, if we're talking about widely distributed utility assets, then a lot of that will fall into the commodity end of things as long as the token supply requirement is actually met. And I think in the previous version, it was 20%. And that calls into question how much of the circulating supply are Ripple, Stellar, and Stronghold directly in charge of. How much of it do they currently hold? And what could they do in order to meet the 10% cap in order to not fall under the SEC? And I'm speculating that the concentration of Stronghold to implement the escrow functionality is in part because of this. And I'm sure that in a combination of different legal entities having control over a certain amount, and it's not directly under the umbrella of the actual company itself, I'm sure that there is some way in order to meet that 10% requirement. I just don't have enough insight on that in order to speculate a lot on it. And the involvement of Hidden Road here is actually interesting as well. So I talked about that because it could be interpreted that Hidden Road was actually referred to in a bunch of the riddle stuff. And there is a lot of talk around that now. So Hidden Road actually cleared the first trade on CME today for XRP futures. And it's also interesting that that happened exactly 10 years from when an announcement was made regarding early investment by CME into Ripple itself. That is just another probably mathematically impossible coincidence.